It's actually a very beautiful story of redemption of a priest who had a moment that forever changed how he approached people. He went to the hospital. He was a chaplain to visit this woman who was really sick, miserable, horrible things happening in her body. He sits down with her and she shares some of her story. She had been horrifically abused for 14 years in this really bad situation. And he ends up asking her something along the lines of, have you forgiven that person? And do you think that possibly you could be sick from not forgiving them? And she responded with, do you think I could possibly be sick from how much heartache and how horrific the abuse was from them? Do you think that the sickness could actually be from their actions and how traumatic it was for me more than my inability to forgive? What was happening is he was in a moment looking for a simple answer, because we all want a simple answer. We want something that can make the pain go away as fast as possible. We want something to fix somebody whose life is sick. We want to create some kind of superstition. Have you tried praying this exact prayer? Have you tried forgiving everyone in your family line? Have you tried rebuking this generational curse? We want an answer that will quickly bypass the amount of pain and suffering that we are in, which actually also bypasses God with us in the pain and suffering. And so he was doing that, and he was writing this article being like, I realized I was in the wrong. Instead of being with her in her suffering, instead of being comfort to her, hearing her story and being heartbroken for what she went through, I was trying to fix what she went through with forgiveness so that she could get out of this pain. And we believe forgiveness is so healing.
I think it's like one of the most powerful things ever.
But in this situation, he was using forgiveness as spiritual bypassing. Whenever we are trying to get out of pain, whenever we're trying to avoid the hard conversation, so we just give a spiritual cliche like, oh, well, have you prayed about that? Or, oh, I'll just pray for you, instead of like, can I actually sit in the pain with you? When we try to avoid the pain of life, we are avoiding God. Jesus was a man well acquainted with sorrows and grief. He was not afraid to be in the suffering of humanity, to be in the challenges of humanity. And when we try to use spiritual ideas as band-aids to just instantly fix people, then it shames them when it doesn't work. If I say, oh, maybe you're sick because you haven't forgiven this person, and they're like, well, I've forgiven as much as I know how. Now it must be that it's their fault they're sick. Now, let's say somebody is stuck in a situation where they keep having battles with their ex-husband, and it's a really hard situation. And we're like, oh, you just need to pray more. Well, if praying more doesn't fix it, then that means they're not doing enough. And now what spiritual bypassing does is it shames the person who's in pain, because they can't just get out of pain with a cliche Christian answer. They can't just pray it away. They can't just forgive it away. They can't just quote scripture over it and have it change. And the Bible is filled with process. People spending 40 years trying to figure out something. Joseph spending 13 years in prison. Like, people went through suffering and process. God was not used to stop the pain. And again, sometimes we feel so inadequate inside of ourselves when we're around grief. I know I've done this when I'm around grief or sorrow, and I want somebody to feel better. I want to have an answer that could fix it. I want them to not be in their suffering. There's genuine compassion there. But when I jump out of the moment to have compassion on them with them, I'm missing that moment where Jesus actually is. He's in the suffering, in the moment where he's actually, I have compassion for where they are right now, even if this doesn't end, even if this doesn't fix. If I can actually be with someone in their grief instead of they're in a better place. God has a plan. All of the things we say because we're terrified of just feeling the moment with people that they are just in heartbreak. And they just need to know that that pain mattered, that trauma mattered, the challenge that they're going through matters. Spiritual bypassing is I have to avoid the challenge, not I will go through it with you.